Homework 10 is graphing, and we're going to be graphing some inequalities. That means that our sign right here is not going to be an equal sign. It's either going to be less than or greater than, or less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. So we're going to start with, here's my inequality. I need to find the m, which the number before the x is the m, and the number here at the end is the b. So my m is 1, and since I'm going to be graphing, I want to write that as 1 over 1. And then my b is -4. So because my sign is a greater than or equal to, when I draw my line, it will be a solid line. So then I go back to my original equation, or original inequality, which was y is greater than or equal to x minus 4. And I'm going to put a 0 in for the x and a 0 in for the y, and that's going to tell me how I'm going to shade when I graph. So 0 is greater than or equal to 0 minus 4. So 0 is greater than or equal to -4. That is true because 0 is greater than all negative numbers. So when we shade, we're going to shade toward or over the 0, 0. So then part 5 is we're going to graph our dashed or solid line, which our inequality, I'm just going to rewrite it over here, was y is greater than or equal to x minus 4. So I know I'm going to have a solid line. And I'm going to start graphing at the b, which is my -4. So I start at -4. And then my slope, or my m, was 1 over 1. So I go from that point up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And then I'm going to connect those points with a solid line. So let me get to the line. And there is my line with arrows on both ends. And then to decide which side of that line I'm going to shade, I go back to my part 4. I got a true statement when I used the test point. So I'm going to shade over or toward the 0, 0. And the 0, 0 is, so my 0, 0 is right here. So I'm going to be doing my shading on that side of the line, and my shading actually goes all the way down to the line, and it just goes on and on forever to the left. So there is my shading. Okay, my number 2, my inequality is y is less than 4x plus 5. So the m, which is the number right before the x, that is 4, but since I am graphing, I want that to be a fraction, 4 over 1. The b is the number out here at the end. So because this is less than, it's going to be a dashed line. And then to find out where I'm going to shade, my inequality was y is less than 4x plus 5. Going to put a 0 in for the y, a 0 in for the x. So 0 is less than 0 plus 5. 0 is less than 5. That is a true statement. So when I go to shade, I'm going to shade toward or over that 0, 0. So now I'm ready to graph. So I'm going to rewrite that inequality here just so we have it. Okay, so I'm going to start graphing at the 5 on the y-axis. Here's my y-axis. So I start at the 5, and the slope of 4 over 1 means we're going to go up 4 and to the right 1. So from this point, I'm going to go up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, to the right 1. And since I can't keep going because the grid stops, I can go backwards. I can go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and to the left 1. Down 1, 2, 3, 4, and to the left 1. And then my line, because I had this less than, and there's no equal to under it, it's going to be a dashed line. So this is a little more difficult for me to make, but I will just do the best I can here. So my dashed line. And then my shading, I can go back up to part 4, and it was a true statement. So I'm going to shade where the 0, 0 is, which it's right here. So that means my shading is here. Okay, on number 3, my inequality is right here. The x plus 3y is greater than 6. Because it's not solved for y, I have to do that first. So I'm going to subtract x on both sides of the equal sign. So that's going to give me 3y is greater than negative x plus 6. Then divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. So this is y is greater than, and this means negative 1 over 3x plus 2. So again, my m is the number in front of the x, so negative 1 over 3. And the b is the number out at the end, so that is 2. My original inequality was greater than, so it is a dashed line. To figure out how I'm going to shade, I go back to my original equation, not the one that I got here in blue, but the one that is typed. So that one is x plus 3y is greater than 6. So that's my original. And now I'm going to put 0 in for the x and 0 in for the y. 0 is greater than 6. That is false. So I will shade away from, or the opposite side of the line as the 0, 0. So when we go to graph, we're going to use the equation we got, or the inequality we got that's in blue. So that one was y is greater than negative 1, greater than negative 1/3 x plus 2. So when we graph, we start at the y, we start at the with the b on the y-axis. So here's my y-axis, was positive 2. And then my slope of negative 1 over 3 means we go down 1 to the right 3. So from this point, down 1 to the right 3, down 1 to the right 3, down 1 to the right 3. And then we could also go backwards, which is up 1 to the left 3, up 1 to the left 3. And our sign was a greater than, so we're going to have a dashed line. And our shading, I believe, was, yes, it was a false statement. So Our 0, 0 is right here. We're going to shade on the opposite side of the line where the 0, 0 is, so that's over here. Okay, number 4, x is greater than -1. Well, we don't even have a y. And remember, when we have just an x and there's no y in the equation, that is going to be a vertical line. And vertical lines have a slope of undefined. And they also do not have a y-intercept or a b. But we can still look to see what kind of line it's going to be, dashed or solid, because this is greater than, it's going to be a dashed. We can still do the shading. So we're going to take x is greater than -1. And we can only put a 0 in for the x because we don't have a y. 0 is greater than -1. That is true because 0 is greater than all negative numbers. So that's a true statement. So then when we graph, our inequality was x is greater than -1. So we do not start on the y-axis because we don't have a y-intercept. We start on the x-axis at the -1. And my line will be dashed because it is a greater than. So here's my dashed line that just goes straight up and down. The 0, 0 is right here. And our shading told us that it was a true statement. So we do shade toward the 0, 0. So the shading will be on this side of the line. Okay, number 5. This time we don't have an x. But if we remember, we have just a y with no x. That's going to be a horizontal line. And the slope of all horizontal lines is 0. And the y-intercept is whatever this number is. So the y-intercept is -1. Because this is a greater than, it's going to be a dashed line. We can still do the test point for the shading. So y is greater than -1. I'm going to put a 0. 0 is greater than -1. That's a true statement because 0 is greater than all negative numbers. So then we're ready to graph. And again, it was y is greater than -1. So this time we do start on the y-axis at -1. It's going to be a dashed line and it's horizontal. The shading told us that it was a true statement, or the test point, I should say. So since it was a true statement, we will shade on this side of the line where the 0, 0 is.